When an IT person tells you something's not feasible, usually that means it's not fun and they don't want to do it. I was fortunate that I was working on some pretty big projects despite being quite young at the time. And IKEA is the kind of place that would give opportunities to people to try different things. I call it a mini retirement, as Tim Ferriss calls it. So bought a fixer-upper in the Caribbean. That was a full transformation, not digital transformation, but an actual literal physical transformation of a property. We're looking for attitude over aptitude. We're typically more looking for attitude more so than very particular skills, especially at the junior levels. For consultants to be replaced, the client's going to have to describe exactly what they want clearly, so we're okay. The cause of failure of large IT programs is rarely the technology. It's often the whole change management and user adoption process. A large proportion of business problems can be solved using Excel. It's just that, we're looking at all these different things, right? So, but you're told Excel's been used for decades and decades, right? So it's what people are comfortable with.
Right.
A lot of people feel nervous or awkward, I think, going to networking events. Trust me, probably 50% or more of the people in there feel the same way. So you're really not alone. It's okay if you're disruptive, but, believe in yourself and, you do what you think is right.
We have Jan today. Jan is the partner at KPMG, specializing in business transformation and tech consulting. With 20 plus years of experiences delivering in SAP transformation across 10 countries. He is a trusted advisor known for driving results and building strong relationship across industries. Jan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, as I said, we'll try to have a conversation around your journey and try to uncover about your ups and downs and learn from it. Great. So let's jump in. I would love to know your early days, right? Your life as a student, right now, your childhood, your first career opportunities, and any pivotal moment that led you to become what you are today.
Sure. Yeah. So if we want to start childhood, we're going way, way back. Maybe I'll be succinct on that part, which is I was basically seen as a troublemaker when I was a kid. So sometimes that surprises people today. So I was that kid that got in trouble in elementary school, in high school. I'd gotten expelled because I'd hacked into the school's website, for example, this sort of thing, right? So I was always, call it disruptive. But I was good with technology. I was good with computers. So ultimately I decided to go into computer science here in Cégep in Montreal. So like an early college sort of thing. And my plan was to go straight to work because, I didn't really like school. It didn't, wasn't for me. So I was studying computer science, and in parallel, I was working at IKEA Canada. And that was where I had discovered. So I was on the sales team. So my first jobs were really around sales and customer service. I'd done cold calling for sales. I kind of liked it in some ways. Quite a challenge, cold calls, but if you're you need to be almost like a machine, right? So ended up working in a call center and customer service. And because I was on the sales side but studying computer science, that's where I quickly saw the benefit of putting these two worlds together. And something I often say, what's funny is, when an IT person tells you something's not feasible, usually that means it's not fun and they don't want to do it, right? So often I was able to, despite sitting on the sales side of the house, I was able to challenge or push back on some of the IT folks, I would say. And so that's what ultimately led me to management information systems, or now the program's called business technology management, which really I saw as the blend between tech and business. So did that while I was in university. Coming out of university, then I started working at Deloitte Consulting. So I got recruited mostly because of my experience in sales supply chain that I had done at IKEA. And I was fortunate that I was working on some pretty big projects despite being quite young at the time. And IKEA is the kind of place that would give opportunities to people to try different things. So it was a really, really great learning environment. Spent some time at Deloitte. I would say Deloitte is where I got my SAP certification and my first start in the SAP space. So it was really the first door, if you want, into the ERP sector. After Deloitte, I was not having a great time. I'll say it that way. So I went over to a startup.
Okay.
So switched from
Mhm.
large consulting to small unfunded startup. Did that for a few years. I was number
Mhm.
4 over there. And by the way, I'll run through this
Wow.
very quickly, and then we can deep dive on whatever you like.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
so ran through so did the startup for about a year. I ran out of money, so I went
Mhm.
back to industry. So I took a job at CN Rail, which is one of our big railway companies here. As a I was a solution architect in the SAP space.
Yes.
After that, I was headhunted. So we have you've probably seen the Dollarama stores in Toronto.
Right.
So I was recruited
Right.
to lead up the SAP implementation for the supply chain component over in Central America as part of their expansion there. So went to live in El Salvador
Wow.
for about 2 years. Um, Probably, I would say
Great.
most interesting but most intense project of my career. After that, I took a 6 months, I call it a mini retirement, as Tim Ferriss calls it. So bought a fixer upper in
Mhm.
the Caribbean. That was a full transformation, not digital transformation, but an actual literal physical transformation of a property. Long story short, came
Understood.
back to Montreal. Was trying to decide between, do I want to go back to industry? Do I want to do Big Four consulting again? Do I look at a boutique firm maybe? So as I considered all this, it seems that my you know maybe sweet spot, or maybe it's human nature. You go back to what you know. So I ended up back at Big Four. So I was at EY for a few years, still in the SAP large
Okay.
program space. And then a couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to move over to KPMG and join the partnership there. And when I joined KPMG, while I kept my, I'll say, SAP background, we are only now getting into the SAP
Mhm.
space because we used to be their auditors. So now we're quite excited that this is really a new white space for us. So I'm helping in that more as my minor, if you want, but my major right now is more large scale transformation delivery services. So any large, complex, big program, they call our team in. So I would say that's the professional career path, and then in between that, because I'm not busy enough. I sprinkle in personal interest. I have an interest in in international development. So I've done projects in Sri Lanka after the tsunami. I gave a
Wow.
business development
Wow.
and social entrepreneurship training in Nepal. I was in Haiti with the Clinton Foundation for with the Ministry of Health over there, and then I was in Kenya.
Wow.
I would say a bit more volunteerism, but with the We organization out there. So quite a varied path. So sorry that was a bit long winded, but that's 25 years summed up in however long that took.
Right. So, I mean, this is very interesting. No, I mean, usually I ask this question to my guest towards the end, but this got me interested, right? So, I have one question for you. I mean, you have like 25 years of experiences, ups and downs, right? I mean, as you have described it. So, I mean, let's imagine this, that if you get a chance to go back in the past, right? And what would you advise to your younger self?
Yeah, it's a great question, and of course, I get this question because I give a lot of presentations at the university, right? So sometimes it takes me a bit of time to think it through. But what I would say is, and I've given different answers over the years, but the one that really struck me now,
Mhm.
and I learned this about myself just this past summer, in fact. It's, I was talking to someone
Okay.
about a situation that I was in. Long story short, I was at an event that I was not supposed to be at, and this guy
Okay.
kind of, it's someone that I've known for about maybe 10, 15 years. And he had a little smirk, and I looked at him and I said, yeah, I'm still a troublemaker. And then he paused and he said, he's like, actually, you're disruptive in a good way. So the advice I would give
Mm.
my younger self is, people are calling you a troublemaker. You're doing, all this like crazy stuff. The advice I would give myself is, hey, you're going to have people that are not going to agree with what you're doing. You're disruptive. It's normal that you're
Oh,
stirring the pot, and don't be afraid to take these risks and these leaps that you're doing, even if it's a non-standard path.
wow. Wow. We'll take a lot of advice from you in this session. So, I mean, I have few questions on the
Remember,
management consulting part. So, I'll just
Nihir,
touch
I'm going
upon
to
them.
interrupt. Yeah, sorry. I think there's a connection. There's a lag in the connection, maybe. Um,
Oh, okay. Okay.
one very important element I always say: all advice that you're going to hear, all advice from anybody, is autobiographical. So remember, what worked for me
I
may or may
Right.
not work for others. So it's always, I say, I'm providing data points. You do with this what you like.
I understand. Thank you for that as well. So, I mean, touching upon the management consulting side, right? I mean, I understand management consulting is kind of an elite field, right? And a lot of top notch guy go into these management consulting side. So, I mean, let's understand this. Let's assume that I'm 20 something and I want to get into this management consulting side, right? Give me a blueprint. Like, how should I start with? If I want to take a program, what program I should go into? If there's a particular skill I want to focus, not to get into that management consulting field. So, I mean, help us understanding this. How I get into management consulting?
Yeah. So there's not, I wouldn't say there's so much a blueprint or a playbook. I feel one thing that's important
Uh-huh.
is we'll often say we're looking for attitude over aptitude. So I'll rarely say you need to
Hmm.
study this particular thing or you need this particular skill, particularly as a junior. When you're starting off, I'm not going to put you in front of a client as an expert in anything, right? So really as a junior, it's more, are you able to learn? Are you picking up fast? And do you deliver high quality work? So if your question is related to
Hmm.
how can you set yourself up, I would say even to get interviews or to break into this space, I would say to show that you're involved in your school, that you have a variety of projects, even personal projects. Me here, you were talking to me about that you have a startup. That's always something interesting. So you want to show more the personality, I would say, of a management consultant more so than the specific skill set. So very curious, always willing to learn, asks good questions. And then of course there's undoubtedly there's an element of I'll try not to blend too much intelligence with academic success, but the academic grades that you have are in some way a reflection of the quality of your work and so on, right? So I would say we're typically
I
more
agree.
looking for attitude more so than very particular skills, especially at the junior levels.
Got it. Got it. I have one critical question in this. Like, I mean, tell me if you want to answer this. Uh, do you see that management consulting is kind of a hot career choice in next decade as well from here onwards? Why do I ask you? I'll tell you that reason, because I see a lot of AI and large learning model coming up, and that is kind of disrupting a lot of industries. So I mean, if I'm 20 something and I want to start in management consulting, so do you still see this as a hot career in next 10 years as well?
It's an excellent question. So, and this is personal opinion, right? So I think management consulting in itself is here to stay, right? You might have seen some of these memes, like for consultants to be replaced, the client's going to have to describe exactly what they want clearly, so we're okay, right? So I think consulting in itself is not going to move. What I think is going to be disrupted, and it already is these
Mhm.
large scale consulting models, right? So particularly if I'm talking
Mm.
about big firms, I think in order for us to evolve, we're going to have to become more agile and quick to adapt to the market. So I think that the our operating models are going to have to shift to some extent. So do I think that it's a bad career path? No. Do I think that it's going to the industry itself is likely to evolve and shift? Certainly. You remember that that
Understood.
that management consulting had started, a lot of it was around knowledge and having information that your clients didn't have, right? Kind of like when you go to your car mechanic, right?
Right.
Like if you don't know how to change the
Right.
light bulb in your car, they're going to charge you X amount versus you doing it yourself. Or if I take the technology angle, back in the 90s, people used to charge you $150 to install Windows on your computer, where all they were doing was clicking next, 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 next. But most people saw it as something scary or didn't know.
Got it.
As now knowledge becomes more pervasive, more available, um, and this has already happened even pre AI, right? Just when Google came around, you'd have a client ask you a question, and they'll Google it at the same time to see like, okay, is what you're saying makes sense. So for consultants, a lot of what I tell my teams also is like, you're bringing your experience, your know-how, and really your flavor to consulting is what then the client's ultimately buying, right? Because now a lot of the information itself can be found.
So it's more about like the blend of experiences, right? I mean, the experiences of the consultant, basically, that is kind of helping the clients and in the client engagement. So that's what
Yeah.
I understand. Okay, wonderful, amazing. Right. So I mean, talking about your journey, I mean, like, no, I mean, as your partner in KPMG, and like, no, I mean, you must be working with the bigger clients, like, no, I mean, with certainly with the big clients. So I really want to understand that, no, because how this question is coming up, and I'll tell you the background as well, because we see that a lot of industries are working in a very traditional fashion, right? So I really want to understand that when you go ahead and take care of the digital transformation, what kind of challenges you have to set and come over and come across. So I really want to understand that your challenges and how do you basically tackle those.
So the biggest challenge is often, I would say, it's the whole people side or the human side of things, right? So it's the technology itself is often straightforward. Like, yeah, if there's a technical challenge, there's always, you've got a background in tech as well, right? So there's typically a
Right.
workaround or something you can build to solve it, right? So particularly on these large scale programs, it's often the human aspect of things, right? So it's how to deal with the different stakeholders who have conflicting priorities, who have different views on how things should go. So there's a whole change management aspect, right? And this is also nothing new. The cause of failure of large IT programs is rarely the technology; it's often the whole change management and user adoption process. So that's typically what we'll face. And then I would say the other thing is, not in all cases, but in certain cases, um, if technology, depending on the client, technology is either seen as a support function, kind of your help desk. They're just, they're there. You need technology to run your business, or depending on the organization, technology is seen as a strategic function, meaning, hey, technology is an enabler and it's a business driver or value driver, right? And so in the cases where it's seen as more a support function, often there's going to be a wait until kind of the last minute when you have to change the tech. So you start to become very reactive, more so than proactive to your digital transformation, right? So I'll use SAP as the example. SAP's new version now, the old version is no longer going to be supported in the coming years. So now suddenly a lot of people are scrambling to say, oh boy, now we need to change this. But this has been known for several years already, right? Um, and then if I'm going by
Right.
the same token, then it's, what is the business value that's coming out of this tech transformation, right? So a lot of the clients too, understandably, you're spending, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars. It should not be just a
Mm.
technical upgrade, right? So you want to make sure there's business value coming out of this. So again, how are you tracking value? How are you ensuring that what you started with, your initial business case, still holds? Because these programs are often multi-year programs.
I understand. So, I'm sure you have way more experience than me in this, but I'll know reflect one of my
Sure, sure.
experiences here. So, with one of my employers, like the entire team is still working on the Excel, and the team wanted to implement Power BI dashboard so that we could extract the data faster than Excel, right? And the entire team got panic. I'm not going to name my employer, but this is what I
The
experienced.
entire
And when
team,
I went
sorry,
into
the
a
entire
grassroots
team
level, I
got
want to
what? What did you say?
they were panicking.
Panic.
I mean,
Okay,
like,
okay.
no, because the new technology is going. Yeah, I mean, the new technology is going to be implemented, and we have to learn, right? Because everyone is very comfortable with Excel, and they have been working that since years now, right? And when I went to this grassroots level, I've understood that, oh, I mean, there are so many companies, there are tons of companies and industries basically are still working on Excel. We are
Absolutely.
talking about large learning model. We are talking about, I mean, AI implementation. And when we go to a grassroots level, there are companies who are scared implementing Power BI as well, right? So, I mean, there's a two-way law.
Yeah.
That's what I understand. So yeah,
And on the note
I
of
mean,
Excel, I was speaking on I was a panelist maybe a couple of years ago on a emerging tech panel, and so of course one of the topics was AI, and I liked what one of my co-panelists said. She said, you know 90% of today's business problems, yeah, we're talking about AIs and LLMs and this and that and whatever, but maybe not 90, but a large proportion of business problems can be solved using Excel. It's just that we're we're,
yeah, yeah,
we're looking
yeah,
at all these
yeah.
different things, right? So, but you're told Excel's been used for decades
Awesome.
and decades, right? So, it's what people are comfortable with.
Right, right, right. Right. So, I mean, I really want to go into a bit of more detail here because I have analytics background. I've studied a bit of AI, right? And I want to understand this implementation in management consulting. So, I was reading an article in Forbes that mentioned that some of the work in management consulting will be taken over by AI, right? So, I mean, I want to understand your perspective here. That do you see uh, AI or AI agent coming up and acting as a co-consultant in some of the client engagement in
Certainly,
future?
certainly. So one of the things we're seeing now, even with our clients, is most people are doing. There's a lot of pilots going on with AI, so people are sort of dipping their toes in the water. But I've seen very few large scale implementations, right? Because and it's fair. Part of it is we still don't know some of the implications of AI. Lot of companies don't even have clean data, and you coming from a data analytics background, you understand that that's the source of everything, right? So just like just like automation, if your process is not clean and you automate it, you just make your mess bigger
Um,
and faster, right? So it's the same thing with AI if
right.
you have poor data, right? So there's an element of having the right foundation before you can even layer AI on top of that. Now, in the future, do I see, for example, we were just talking about some of the challenges when you run projects is the whole human aspect, right? I would personally
Right.
welcome the day where there's an AI agent sitting at the table, and now you're less around the emotions and why should we do this, and it's like, hey, give me the facts around this particular topic, and what do you suggest, right? Because you get into situations where a lot of people around the table know what the right thing to do is, but you've got one or two people that don't for whatever reason, right? So I feel that becomes a bit harder to argue against. But that being said, it still
Hmm.
means that people will need to acknowledge or accept an AI agent as part of the team. I'll put it that way, right?
Yeah. Great. Awesome. Awesome. I mean, great. Thank you for your perspective here. I know I follow your LinkedIn page. I mean, I see that you keep posting some of the content about how you got into consulting. So I was reading your part one, part two, and it was great. I mean, the way you summarize everything. So and I also see that no, you kind of emphasize on communication, relationship building, right? So I mean, I really want to understand like okay, again, I'll come to a ground level, right? How do I improve my communication, my relationship building if I'm at zero, right? I want to go from zero to one and I want to go from one to 10. How do I improve that? A communication relationship building.
So I'll split the two a little bit, right? So communication itself, I'm going to
Hmm.
cover it more as, how you communicate certain things, who you're communicating to and so on. And then
Hmm.
relationship building, I'll put it more as, networks, who and all this, right? So um, for communication, obviously having a podcast as you're doing is an excellent way to build that up. Not everybody going to start a podcast, right? So let's start at the
Right.
basic levels. I would say if you're already in the workplace, it's to look for opportunities to be able to, let's say, present, right? It could even be oftentimes you want to even do internal things. So you're not, let's say, if I'm talking consulting, not being in front of a client. So for instance, I offer my team members opportunities to present internal team meetings, lunch and learns, things like that, right? And then you can ask if you have a coach or a mentor, hey, can you keep some notes while I'm presenting to give me give me some feedback when it's done, right? The other side is also even in meetings, and I have done this, is I'll ask someone before the meeting, hey, I know that I can sometimes be a little too direct or a little bit too much. Can you just keep an eye on this and let me know afterwards? I'm going to ask you for feedback. So I would say from a communication
Oh,
standpoint, It's really, you might think you're coming across a certain way, but it's to really get an external perspective. And one of the things I would say, especially, I don't know if a lot of your audience is more technical people, but I think especially for more tech folks, we tend to quickly get into the details or the nuts and bolts, which not everybody necessarily cares about, right? So what's important is also learning to communicate at what level, right? So if I'm speaking to an executive, I'm not going to go into the details of how fields in a particular interface work and why something broke and all this, right? Whereas if I'm speaking to the technical person, it'll be like, well, yeah, here's the technical name of the field, here's the connector we use, here's the technology that was used, and so on, right? So generally the approach I like to take is I'll give the high level response first. And if that's good enough, it stops there. If the person starts to probe a little bit more,
Okay.
then we'll go more and more into the details. And then
Got it. Got it. So it's more of like a high level.
yeah. So if I put that on the communication
Sorry to
side,
interrupt.
no, it's okay. Like I said, I think it's a connection. It's the connection here. So that's the communication. I would say with regards to relationship building, some of that is really just being out and about, being present, right? Especially if there are networking events, just show up, right? And you're not. A lot of people feel nervous or awkward, I think, going to networking events. Trust me, probably 50% or more of the people in there feel the same way. So you're really not alone, right? And this is what's incredible, is that you never know who you're going to meet, who you're going to come across. And of course, Toronto's a little bit of a bigger city, but Montreal is very small, especially the business community, right? So often you're going to cross somebody who knows somebody, and this is how you build relationships. And in sales, there's this saying that you buy from who you like or who you trust, right? And
Like,
that
you trust.
trust
Right.
and those relationships get built not always at work, and it's or with your colleagues sometimes, again, depending on how friendly you are. It's getting to know them outside of work. For instance, I know for myself, when I'm at the office or I'm in work mode, I'm like a machine, right? Like my wife was watching me during COVID, and she's like, "Yeah, you're like laser focused, and that's all." But if we go out for a beer, we go out for a drink. Okay, now you're going to hear the fun side of Ian, right? So I think you need that balance to see both.
Amazing, amazing. So, I mean, I was listening to one of the consultant as well, and he kept on focusing on one thing, that everything AI can take it from you, but not the communication and the relationship building you did, right? And all the jobs, all the top jobs will be given to people who are great at communication.
Yeah,
So, I mean, hearing that from you as well. So,
yeah, and I mean,
amazing,
I think what's
amazing.
interesting
So,
with
I mean,
AI and communication, for sure, and as much as I'd like to think I'm a good communicator, I still use AI to double check. In fact, what's funny, throughout my career, I've always used one of my colleagues as a, you know, can you read this email and make sure it's soft enough, or can you soften it? Now I use AI for that, right? So AI even helps me with communications
oh, right,
to make things more,
right,
collaborative or constructive, rather than, again, as a techie person, too direct, right? But
right,
you're absolutely right in the sense that, and I see this now, right? I see a lot of stuff going on LinkedIn that, clearly is AI generated, but when you're face to face with someone, you're gonna have to talk to them, right? It's like, at least for now, you don't have the
right,
implant in your brain to help
right.
you come up with it, right? So I think for the moment, for sure, face to face communications is still going to be a absolutely critical skill.
Right, right. So there's one question that I want to ask you, because again, my audience is 20 something, 30 something, right? So if you have to start your management consulting career today, right? Assume you're 20 something, you're starting today. What is the one top skill you look for?
If I was starting today, I would try to look at, again, you want to plan ahead as much as you can, right? So obviously right now there's a lot of
Oh,
focus on AI, there's a lot of focus on ESG factors, right? Climate change. So I would choose. So me personally, because I like technology and, the whole, as we said, international development or making the world a better place, I would look at how do you merge these two things. And of course, there is a lot of ESG technology
wow.
also that's coming up now, right? So I would say not much different than it was when I was there. It's really when I started, compared to today, it's really take in as much as you can, learn as much as you can, discover as much as you can about, yourself and what you like, but certainly choose things that you see are evolving or are going to be big in the coming years. And there's no question that AI, data, ESG, these are all, not just current topics, but we're really, with AI and AI agents coming up and all this, we're really, I feel, in a paradigm shift of what the workplace is going to look like, and not just the workplace but the world, right? I read something yesterday that showed, I think it was in Africa, they were using AI tutors at a school, and it showed like an 80% progress or something that would have taken the equivalent of 2 years in a significantly shorter time span. So, again, how can you use these things to help some of these, underserved communities leapfrog ahead?
Right. And AI is basically taking part into it. So
Yeah.
for sure. Right. I mean, thank you so much. It was great. I have one question that I asked to all my guests, and I would ask you as well. So, one unfiltered advice that you received from your mentor that is helping you till date.
That's a good question. Unfiltered, I would say it's to probably choose your battles. Think again, me being someone that's not uncomfortable with difficult situations. Um, it's
Mhm.
choosing where you want to step in and what's important to you. So one of the advice I had gotten back when was exactly that, right? It was, make sure that you're thinking about where you're stepping out and what you value, what your core values are, and not getting yourself into, um, how did he call it, unproductive conflict, I think is what he had said, right? So I would say that's in terms of unfiltered advice. But with regards to, as you had said, right, in terms of, for me, the whole learning aspect, it's to, or what I've learned about myself, or the advice I would give my younger self, I think that's really more the core is, you know it's okay if you're disruptive, but, um, believe in yourself, and you do what you think is right.
Amazing, amazing. So choose your battle and kind of play on your strength. So that's what I understand. Thank you so much. I mean, no, we concluded really fast. I mean, I was kind of planning this that we'll go ahead, on and on. But again, you were very crisp, very sharp on the answers. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And I think that's all I have
Okay.
for this
We can always
conversation. So thank you
we
so
can
much for
always do,
joining.
if there's any specific topics that you'd want to deep dive on at some other points, happy to do it, because I often get a lot of the it's what I appreciate about what you're doing is that, podcasts and all this, you have more reach, right? So it helps because I get a lot of similar
Right,
questions in various environments, right?
right.
So a lot of people are having the same reflection. So it's great that you're doing something like this.
I'm going to give solution to everyone this, right? I mean, I'm going to have Ian on my platform, quickconnect.ai, right? And everyone can come and connect. I mean, book time with him. I mean, this is kind of, as I say, it's a paid model. You pay to your mentor, have him on your desktop, talk to him, have a lot of conversation, and learn from him. I think this was from my end. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'm going to see you into the next episode.
Thanks for having me.